Welcome to the Saturday Show. I'm Jonathan Capehart. This week, we've marked indelible inflection points in the 2024 presidential election and the state of our democracy. On Thursday, we watched a disastrous debate that has the nation fearing like never before another Trump presidency. And not going to lie, Biden's performance in Atlanta was as horrific as it was sad. And now Democrats are in full panic mode with calls for the president to bow out of the race for someone younger. But Donald Trump's performance was as horrifying as it was terrifying. He put on a campaign rally filled with his usual avalanche of lies, projection, and veiled threats. Then on Friday, the Supreme Court, the one with the 6-3 conservative supermajority, thanks to Trump's one-term presidency, handed down decisions that were further exhibits of why elections matter. It threw out a 40-year-old ruling that gave federal agencies the power to use their expertise to determine policy when the law is ambiguous. That will now be in the hands of the courts. The conservative supermajority also ruled that Eighth Amendment protection from cruel and unusual punishment doesn't apply to the homeless arrested for sleeping in public spaces, even when a community lacks indoor shelter and its unhoused residents have nowhere else to go. And this is the same Supreme Court that will let us know on Monday if a sitting president is immune from prosecution, even if he orders the military to kill a political opponent. If Trump wins the election in November, he could fill at least 2 Supreme Court seats, as Justices Thomas and Alito are sure to retire, making way for young, equally conservative jurists who could spend decades turning back the clock on decades of rights that have made this country more just, more fair. The panic unleashed by Biden's performance is understandable. But as Vice President Harris said in an interview, President Biden should be judged on his masterful performance over the last 3.5 years, not 90 disastrous minutes. Also, and most importantly, if Republicans are standing lockstep with a 78-year-old disgraced, twice impeached, 4 times indicted on 88 counts and convicted on 34 felonies former president, who's been found liable for fraud and sexual assault and is awaiting trial for trying to overturn the 2020 election and for refusing to return classified documents, then Democrats damn well should be standing lockstep with their ethical and morally decent 81-year-old president who has a raft of bipartisan accomplishments many said he could never achieve and is presiding over the strongest economy in the world. Talk of replacing Biden at the top of the ticket or forcing him to get out of the race makes Democrats look weak. Why should independents and anti-Republicans desperate to defeat Trump cast a ballot for Biden if his own party goes into a full-scale panic if he doesn't do everything perfectly every time? On the civil rights pilgrimages I took with the late Congressman John Lewis, always in attendance was Betty Mae Fikes, long known as the voice of Selma. It is in times like these that I hear her voice singing out these words from an old folk song with undeterred conviction. Keep your eyes on the prize, hold on. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Joining me now, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Texas. She's a member of the House Oversight and Accountability Committee. Congresswoman Crockett, thank you very much for coming to the Saturday Show. I was just having a rather spirited conversation with Charlie Sykes, who disagrees with me. I don't know if you had a chance to hear my opening statement, basically telling Democrats to buck up and stand behind the president because Republicans clearly are standing behind their twice impeached convicted felon of a nominee. What say you?
Now, I stand with you, Jonathan, and I stand with the President of the United States. You know, I've been thinking about this. Obviously, Republicans will stand with, it seems like, the devil, if it means that they are going to get their disastrous policies in place. That's all they care about. And I've been trying to stress to people that this election should be about them as individuals, and they should be voting not for the exact person, but the team. They need to be looking at who can control the House, who can control the Senate, as well as the White House, and what types of policies is that team going to push forward. And finally, I've ultimately decided that this is kind of like cough syrup. Nobody really likes the taste of cough syrup, but at the end of the day, they take cough syrup because cough syrup is what they need to heal their bodies. Right now, this country needs to be healed, and they will not find healing if they decide to deal with Donald Trump, but they will find healing if they decide that they want to give this administration another 4 years, so that hopefully we may have an opportunity to get a better Supreme Court. We may have an opportunity, so long as we get the House, to go ahead and get another child tax credit passed, to make sure that there is going to be a housing stipend passed so that people can go ahead and move into new homes and things like that.
Congresswoman, the New York Times has called on the president to bow out of the race. Just this afternoon, before we came on the air, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution called on the president to bow out of the race. What are you hearing from fellow members of Congress about whether the president should drop out? Is there even the hint of a groundswell that he should leave the race?
I don't think there is. And you know what is so frustrating for me, Jonathan, you know better than almost anyone that most people came to know me when I fled the state of Texas over voting rights. What we have to think about, what people are asking us to do, is subvert the will of the people. The people have spoken, and this is our Democratic nominee. To do anything else at this point in time would basically say, you know what, forget what those people did because of what some pundits decided, because of what the New York Times thought we should do. Listen, that's not what we do in a democracy. We don't just replace somebody because there is this feeling that there was a 90-minute situation that they felt like wasn't his best day. And if I'm real, it wasn't his best day. But here's the deal. This man has given us so many amazing and incredible days of his life for almost 50 years. And the fact that we want to delete that because of a 90-minute performance in which his opponent did not perform well. He just kept talking the whole time, but he didn't answer half the questions, and the other half of the questions he did answer, he was lying about. But that's not what we're talking about. Instead, people want to talk about our president, who has performed in an extraordinary way. History will look back and talk about the record of Joe Biden, and it's going to be one of positivity.
Joining me now, Congressman James Clyburn of South Carolina, a national co-chair for the Biden-Harris campaign. Congressman Clyburn, as always, thank you for coming to the Sunday show. So let me get a word from you. Do you agree with Minority Leader Jeffries that President Biden's comeback, that this is President Biden's comeback moment?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much for having me. The fact of the matter is, I've made it very clear ever since the morning after, that is Friday morning, that I think people ought to just chill out. This is something that denotes what can happen anytime a sitting president takes it upon himself to debate. It has happened historically. I saw it happen to Ronald Reagan. It happened to Barack Obama. And now it's happened to Joe Biden. When you've been running the country, as he has been for 3.5 years, faced with all of the issues that he is faced with, you don't have time to set aside and make up stories about the past or to forget about what's going on around you. You've got to face your job, and he's been doing that. And so for him to go into preparation, and what I've been calling this a classic example of preparation overload, I just think that there should have been much less preparation for this debate and much more activism in his job.
You know, Congressman, I actually agree with you. You could see the president trying to remember the dollars and the figures and the everything. And there were moments when just the President Biden from the heart, as one person called him, Irish Biden, would come out and say, more of that, please. Congressman Clyburn, have you spoken to the president since the debate?
No, I have not. We knew before the debate that he was going to do that debate and was going to go to New Jersey and on over to or down from there to Delaware with his family. And I never had planned to talk to him until after I finished here in Wisconsin on tomorrow. I'm doing my 5th event of the day here in Wisconsin, and I'll be here all day tomorrow, and then I will talk to the president afterwards.
Congressman Clyburn, since you are there in Wisconsin and doing lots of events, tell me the truth. What are you hearing from people on the ground?
Almost total, and I'm saying almost because I have not heard a single person express anything negative. All they're saying to us is keep Joe Biden moving forward. And from what I've heard, around $33 million in small donations, most of it, two-thirds of it coming in small donations, coming into the party. When I left Washington on Friday night, I went directly to Tampa, Florida. I was in a meeting with 8,400 African-American men, to a person, every one of them. When I mentioned Joe Biden, they were standing on their feet. They had nothing to say but positive things about this campaign. So when I hear all this talk about he should drop out, I don't see that anywhere out here. No place. Here in Madison, I'm not in Benoit. I'm going on to Milwaukee. Nothing says that Joe Biden ought to.
Congressman, one more question for you, since you mentioned that event you did with all those black men. Donald Trump said at the debate that migrants were taking so-called black jobs. Congressman Clyburn, what is a black job?
That's what I've been trying to figure out. And all those men I talked to down there in Tampa, Florida, was asking me, is your job a black job? He said, I'm sitting in court. I'm a federal judge now on senior status. Is my job a black job? What is Donald Trump talking about? I said, well, he has always categorized black people as being different from white people and therefore relegate us to a special type of job. And that's what he's talking about. There ain't no black jobs or white jobs. These are jobs in the American economy, and all of us ought to be pursuing the opportunity to fill these jobs, except in Donald Trump's world.
Yeah, as Aunt Gloria said yesterday, when Donald Trump says black jobs, she immediately thinks that he looks down on us and thinks that we are inferior. But we know better. Congressman James Clyburn of the great state of South Carolina, thank you, as always, for coming to the Sunday Show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, one of the vice presidential contenders, Governor Doug Burgum of North Dakota, was on Meet the Press this morning, and Kristen Welker asked him if he would accept the election results, 2024 election results. Here's what he said.
So let me ask you, Governor, can you say, as someone who is on the short list to be Trump's VP nominee, can you commit here and now today to accepting the election results?
Well, listen, these hypothetical questions that keep coming up imply that somehow that in every one of our 3,100 counties in America that everything is going to go perfectly.
You won't commit to accepting the election results, Governor?
I will commit to, if they're free and fair, of course.
Come on. Like, why can't he just answer the question? Zerlina, you go first.
Because then he wouldn't be on the short list for vice president. He has to equivocate. He has to add in these caveats. The only acceptable answer is yes, I will accept the results of the election, because black people voting and Latino people voting, those are legitimate votes. And that is the unspoken subtext when Republicans question the results of elections. Since 2020, Donald Trump has basically been saying the only reason why he lost in 2020 is because millions of illegal people voted. Now, people are not illegal. I'm not saying that. I'm quoting Donald Trump. Right. But the point is that that's the subtext, and that's what they're not saying. So, again, it's a bunch of gaslighting, but another word for gaslighting is just lying.
Mm-hmm. Let me play another, for you, Rick, another VP contender, and that's Senator J.D. Vance. He was on Face the Nation, and he was asked whether Margaret Brennan asked Senator Vance whether Donald Trump should pardon himself if he wins election. Watch this.
So you do believe that a president could pardon himself for federal crimes?
I believe that the president has broad pardon authority, Margaret, but more importantly, I think the president has immunity. It's not about whether he should pardon himself. Mm-hmm. It's about whether be prosecuted in the first place for discharging his official duties.
Now, I'm no lawyer, but am I wrong? In order for you to get a pardon, don't you have to admit some kind of guilt?
Yes.
Okay.
You must accept guilt, accept responsibility, and admit guilt. And obviously, Donald Trump will never do that. Look, JD is another one of the contenders here, and you know he's been up and down in the standings lately. Burgum seems to be moving up because he's even more sycophantic to Trump than even J.D. Vance, which takes a lot of work, Jonathan. I mean, it takes a lot of effort. He's really putting in the time to be the king of Suck Up Mountain for Donald Trump right now.
I hear you chuckling, Zerlina. What, you have any words on that before we go to the next soundbite?
I don't have anything to add. I think that was well put. The only reason why they need a vice president is because Mike Pence is not available. He didn't retire. I just want to remind people that.
Right, right. It's a dangerous job being Trump's vice president.
Jonathan, if I could jump in for 30 seconds, I just want to say Doug Burgum, though, reminds me, he's like Mike Pence without the smoldering sensuality. You know, this is not an exciting guy.
It took me a while. I was like, wait, what? And I just want to point out that North Dakota is where my husband is from and where my in-laws live. So I'm not laughing at North Dakota, but it is actually. Wait, okay. So speaking of vice presidents, here's what Lara Trump had to say on Fox News Sunday Morning Futures. That show with Maria Bartiromo. Listen to what she had to say about what a vote for President Biden would mean in 2024.
Most people would say if you vote for Joe Biden, you're actually voting for Kamala Harris because there's a low likelihood that Joe Biden gets through all 4 years.
Yeah, it's a bad situation all around for the Democrats because, look, in order for them to put someone else in to run, they have to get Joe Biden either to quit or they have to remove him, as you noted, via the 25th Amendment.
Zerlina, what? Just your reaction.
Okay, so what's wrong with Vice President Kamala Harris? I just want them to admit that why they don't like her, and then we can move on with a sane discussion. Because there's subtext in what they're saying. That would be a big problem for Democrats. But what they don't want to say is it would be a problem for Democrats to nominate a black woman. And why would it be a problem for Democrats to nominate a black woman? Because there are a lot of people in this country who do not like black women. But black women are the base of the Democratic Party. So I would say to Democrats, anybody considering replacing Joe Biden with somebody other than Kamala Harris might want to do some math, because they're not going to win an election without black women turning out in droves.
And Rick, more to the point, the most reliable voters in the United States are black women.
Look, I don't look at it as a subtext. I look at it as like 400-point Comic Sans type. They're really just out there saying the scary black lady could replace Joe Biden. Be afraid. And it is as outrageous as it is predictable, unfortunately. And for Lara Trump to go out there and trot this out, it is one of many, many, many dog whistles. I mean, we saw Trump during the debate talking about the black jobs. You know, which went over very well for him. I've noted with the African American community in the country so far. He's, you know, this is an unsubtle game that they're playing, and they're going to keep playing it because a certain part of their audience is convinced that she is the most dangerous person in America, and it's an absurdity, of course.
Right, because she's black. Rick Wilson and my fellow Rome buddy, Zerlina Maxwell, thank you both very much for coming to the Sunday Show. This final weekend of Pride Month is a good time to acknowledge how far the LGBTQ+ community has come and to recognize the new challenges we face, spanning from a potential second Trump term in Project 2025 to looming threats from the Supreme Court. Joining me now to discuss the state of LGBTQ+ rights in our country, James Black, President and CEO of Family Equality; Kiara Johnson, Executive Director of the National LGBTQ Task Force; and Kelly Robinson, President of the Human Rights Campaign. I am just squealing over all this Black queer excellence on the screen right now. So I'm going to go around the table, and I'm going to start with you, Kelly, because you are not here. How concerned are you about the fate of marriage equality?
Look, anybody looking at the Supreme Court wouldn't feel confident that this is a court that's going to make sure that they protect the rights that we've gained over the last several decades. I mean, you don't have to look further than their overturning of Roe v. Wade, where in one fell swoop, they took away 50 years of precedent that protected our rights. So moving ahead, there's two things that are clear for me. One, that the Supreme Court is on the ballot this election cycle. And two, that any of our rights that are protected through Supreme Court precedent are fragile. And that means that we've got to move forward deeper and stronger protections through legislation and law. Some of that's been done through things like the Respect for Marriage Act, but we have a long way to go.
Mm-hmm. And, Kiara, to that point, the Munoz case that was decided by the Supreme Court arguably was a case about immigration. But Justice Amy Coney Barrett, writing for the majority, turned this immigration case into a marriage case and denying a visa to the El Salvadorian national husband of a U.S. citizen whose daughter is also a U.S. citizen, and saying basically there is no fundamental right for this married person to have their spouse in the country, which strikes right at the heart of the Obergefell decision. And this was a big red flag that Justice Sotomayor pointed out in her dissent. How worried should the community be that Obergefell is maybe a Supreme Court term or two away from being overturned?
I mean, I think we've got to do more than be afraid. I think we've got to really move towards action. I think what we've been able to see is how connected, how linked our fates are. There is no issue that people care about: immigration, housing, prison reform, that does not directly and often uniquely impact LGBTQ people. And so this is a community. These are community issues. These are LGBTQ issues, but they're also American issues. And we've got to get out and really be counted, not just for the election, but locally, school board elections and state houses, et cetera. So now's the time to galvanize for sure.
James, what do you make of all this?
We should be worried, right? So one of the key focus areas of our policy work is marriage, is protecting the right to marriage. And so here we see where the majority has used one area of law, immigration, to impact a seemingly unrelated area of law, marriage equality. And it has some immediate impacts to LGBTQ plus families, again, the work that we do at Family Equality, like forced separation. It could actually have the impact of having a person who's LGBTQ plus move to another country that criminalizes homosexuality, right? Or where their marriages are not protected. It has immediate impacts to our families. And the other thing is, we are not looking at this case in isolation. It's exactly what Kiara is saying. All of this is connected. We're looking at this as a broader step to implementing the goals of Project 2025.
Mm-hmm. And Project 2025 is that plan, that project out of the Heritage Foundation that is looking at a wholesale reorganization, not just of the government, but of the country. Kelly, this week, the court announced that it's going to hear an appeal by the Biden administration that it gets put the court in the debate over gender affirming care for transgender minors. How concerned? When I first saw the news, I got very concerned that the Supreme Court is going to wade in on this issue. But then, because it's the Biden administration that is calling for this case to be heard, should I not be as worried?
Look, it's the last day of Pride Month. I thought we were going to do some happy Pride things, but
No. We will get there. Just answer this question.
Okay. All right. Well, look, again, the Supreme Court is not an institution right now that people are feeling very confident in, which is why I think that there's so much worry and concern. At the end of the day, right now, there is a ban on gender-affirming care, on health care access for trans people in some states, particularly in Tennessee, where this case comes from. So the Supreme Court hearing it is actually an opportunity for them to side on the side of facts and uphold the Constitution and uphold the rule of law by not allowing the ban that is currently in place to continue. So there's a little bit of a silver lining here. But I also want to say this. We have a Supreme Court that currently has not been doing their job. They have been creating laws and legislating through their decisions instead of upholding the Constitution and upholding laws as they are. So our job right now is to tell our stories, to bring more visibility to what this case is all about, and make sure that when they are in oral arguments, when they are actually hearing the facts, that there's enough room for them to do their job in upholding the rule of law. Because at the end of the day, when you look at this case, what it's trying to do is legalize discrimination in healthcare for certain people based on their gender identity. That's not right. And the majority of Americans do not want politicians deciding their healthcare for them. We learned that time and time again.
Right.
So as people are looking at this, I know that there's a lot of concern and worry, but I have to have you remember that we are not without hope, and we are certainly not without power. And there is something that we can do about it to all of these things that are causing us such concern and worry.
Well, you know, James, to Kelly's point, because she said, I thought this was going to be a happy conversation. Well, I mean, talk about some happy things that the community should be happy about.
You know, I think the community should be happy that we are still making progress, right? In the midst of this barrage of anti-LGBTQ plus legislation, that although we are sort of in this defensive posture, right? We're just sort of battling all these laws and all these bills. We are still making progress. I think about the historic settlement that we just won over Florida, the Florida Don't Say Gay law, where we were able to come to a settlement that nullifies the most harming aspects of that bill. Essentially, you can say gay now in Florida. I think that's something that we should be proud of, right? I think that there are ways that we are being proactive and not just fighting laws, but also thinking about what are the ways in which we can start to implement legislation that helps our families. And the Biden administration is a great demonstration of that. We should be proud and we should be happy, and we should also know all of the work that this administration has done to protect our families.
Kira?
We've been out during Pride season, right, all month long, and it's been really inspiring for me to see prides grow this year. You look at Houston, you look at Phoenix, Kissimmee, Florida. There are places who are having their very first pride this year, and some of them are growing 3, 4, 5, and 6 times. That is telling us that we're not shrinking away, but actually our base is growing, not just in numbers, but in active, in action, right? And so that's a telling story. That is not people that are looking to hide or shrink away, but they are hungry to be in this fight.
People not hiding or shrinking away, but also, am I in hearing what you just said, is it also allies are coming out and joining us and basically saying to their communities and therefore to the country, by your example, you are not alone.
It's a family affair. Teachers, listen, administrators, parents, aunties, we are out in these streets, grandmas supporting our family, and we're only getting stronger.
Kelly, I'm going to give you 20 seconds, and we're already over time, but give me your happy talk at the end of Pride.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a beautiful thing. And I'm very clear that people are worried because it felt like equality was inevitable for so long. And now we're experiencing the backlash that comes when you start to move forward your rights and your power. And it's happening not because the LGBTQ plus community is weak, but because we are powerful. So our job right now is to not lose sight of our power. There are 75 million voters that prioritize LGBTQ plus issues when deciding who to vote for. 75 million. If we show up, we win. Period. So this is one of those moments where even though things are dark and scary in some places, we cannot lose sight of hope and we cannot lose sight of our power, because we are on the precipice of change that really can save and protect and advance our rights for generations to come.
What was that, Kira? Period. Do that again?
Period.
Period. Kelly Robinson, Kira Johnson, James Black, thank you all very much for coming to the Sunday Show.
Thank you.
Virtually everyone has an opinion about Thursday's debate between President Biden and Donald Trump, from politicians to pundits to the folks next door. My next guest told me earlier this week that she was, quote, disappointed with Biden's performance, but added, quote, President Biden is the best choice. He represents all people. It is his wisdom and caring of people we need. Trump is totally not qualified to be president. Who said that? America's aunt, my Aunt Gloria Evan Kindred. Aunt Gloria, welcome back to the Saturday show. So you told me President Biden needed to slow down. Talk more about that.
He really does. You know, it's not like we need someone who can run across the country. He went from Atlanta to North Carolina. He doesn't need to be doing all of that. We need his wisdom. We need it in this world. If that's the only way we're going to stay away from World War III. And you know, he doesn't have to be on a campaign trail 24 hours. We need him to be there with his wisdom. He is the only person who can handle what's going on in the world right now.
Gloria,
Kamala could do more.
How do you think Donald Trump came across in the debate?
That's the most racist man I ever seen. Way he said the blacks, the migrants were taking jobs from the blacks. He doesn't think anything about anybody other than himself and rich people. And the sad thing about it, a lot of his people who follow him are these small town, middle class, working people. And he describes everyone as you're low class. But,
hey, Aunt Gloria, let me play something from the debate on Thursday that made you, in your email to me, you said this particular thing, quote unquote, pissed you off. Watch this.
The fact is that his big kill on the black people is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking black jobs now.
Aunt Gloria, what's a black job?
Obviously, for Trump, it's low income, low workers, anything that low income. He does not respect blacks. He does not respect anyone other than rich people. I just thought, you're saying we're the only ones who are going to work those jobs? That we're no more than slaves. You know, we build the country off our backs, and then we had the migrants are coming and keeping it going. But he has no respect for people of our race, any race. And what's so sad is his constituents don't even realize he wouldn't even sit down with you. What happened to town halls? Let's see if he'll sit down and talk to people. But he won't. He just like to throw out stuff. But to say the blacks, like, what are we? But we got to put a sign up. We're the blacks. It's like,
right. I'm going to put a sign up.
I know.
Well, the two of us, yeah.
You are now Jonathan Capehart, one of the blacks. And Joy Reid, you're one of the blacks.
One of the blacks. All right. So, Uncle, I got to get you one more thing before I have to let you go. How do you respond to the chorus of Democrats telling President Biden to drop out of the race?
No, he should not drop out of the race. He is the most qualified. Believe me, he is the only one who can handle all the things that are coming up. You don't want Trump there. No one else has his wisdom, and he's going to be fine. You know, he has a very capable person behind him, Vice President Kamala Harris, and he is the only one who can do this job. We need him there. Don't, you know, you got to, like he said, when he came to North Carolina, you get knocked down, get back up and fight. And that's exactly what you have to do.
Aunt Gloria, I want to thank you, as always, for coming to the Saturday show. And I'm gonna call you because there's a weekend next month in July that's going to mark the 100 days before the November election. And I'm going to get you here to Washington, whether you want to come. Oh, good. Hear that, America? America's Aunt's going to be live here on the show that weekend. Aunt Gloria, thank you, as always, for coming to the Saturday show.
You're welcome. Take care.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more, September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.